Good afternoon and welcome to the November 2nd Penfield Trails Committee meeting. First up on the agenda, the review of our minutes from last month. Did everybody have a chance to review them, and are there any issues? They look fine to me, Eleanor. Thank you. Hearing no objections or corrections, I consider them approved. Coming up first, just a review of our guided hikes. The hike this past month in October at Shadow Pines, we had 9 people attend, so decently attended. It was a good group. Myself and Eleanor and Jackie and attended, so we had a good time. It was a great day. Coming up in this month on 2 weeks or week and a half from now, on Saturday the 12th?
Yes, it
Is our hike at Sherwood Field. Mm-hmm. And the Hoylers have graciously offered to lead that hike. Mm-hmm. So they were asking me what I knew about the place, and I said the only thing I remember from Nels talking was the commission ditch. So if you have other information about Sherwood Field, feel free. I'm sure they would love to.
Yeah, there's actually a sign there along the commission ditch that has some history and some background. So we read that, and we'll do a little more research on the property.
That's new, isn't it?
I don't know how long that sign's been
I
there.
don't remember that being there.
Yeah. I was there a couple of years ago. It was
There
there.
was?
Yeah. It's not part of a path, though, where you normally would walk. It's along the ditch between where the path is and the road.
The bridge heading?
Yes, it's past the bridge.
Oh, it is?
It depends on your direction, but
Well,
yes.
Yeah.
Heading towards
That's right. It makes a
west?
difference, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, yes.
And I guess just a administrative thing, Andrew. The sheet that in the past I've gone to pick up, can we just have that emailed to us?
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the past, I've gone to the rec center, usually Friday afternoon, to pick up the sheet and the signs. I have the signs in my trunk, and I'm thinking that at least at this point, I can give the signs to you either
Right.
tonight or before the hike. Mm-hmm. And we just have to figure out, by some chance, if it's not one of the two of us leading,
Right.
figure out a way of getting the signs. It doesn't seem to make sense to go to then the sheet has to get returned to the rec center. So I'll give this to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay. Maybe what's easiest is I'll just email that out to the entire committee, just like what we do with agendas and minutes, just so that everyone sees it anyways, just to see what the names and how many people. And then if it's easier, just email us back the information, whoever guides the hike, and we can update that Word document. So no need to.
Or I'll just scan it and give it back to you.
Yeah, scan whatever works best.
Okay.
Thanks.
But I don't mind going to see you at the rec center, but it doesn't seem to be necessary.
I get it. It's fine.
Okay. In terms of the guided hike schedule, last month, for those of you who recall, we worked on the guided hike schedule, and based on the notes, I sent out the revised suggestion. I think we have locked and loaded because of the Penfield winter bulletin, at least the first 4 months or 6 months?
It's 6 months. We
Okay.
go all the way from, our winter spring brochure is really from January all the way until the end of May, a little bit into June, so we try to include June hike in there. So I did take all that information from the rec department, and we had staff this year not only kind of replicate what we've done in the past for our hike signs, which is a schedule for the whole year. One is front and back, and this is kind of what had been done before. I apologize, I only printed out one of each so we can just pass it around and see it. Our staff actually looked at creating a little bit more of a cleaner look that has all of the guided hikes on the front, so when people see it, they see, oh, it's for the whole year, because a lot of things that we see at the rec department is we display it in different cases. People will walk by. On our previous sign, it only goes until like April. So then they go, oh, we didn't know there was anything past April. They didn't know it was two-sided. So out of that, we kind of took what we've heard from people, put everything on the front, and then on the back of this one is actually indications of where these different trails are. So I'll pass these around to everybody. Again, I apologize that there's just one.
What about an indication of our 1 to 4 boots? Is there any way of, okay,
On our original one that we've used in the past, because it was multi-sided for all of them, we were able to fit the boots in there. I will say on the new one, it was a little tight to fit the boots on there, but we direct people to go to the website to check out where all that information will be. I will say we're still about 2 weeks away from finalizing our winter spring brochure. We do have an icon of boots listed next to those trails, so that is included in the recreation brochure. It is, I think it looks great, but on the one I just passed around, that information wasn't on there for the newer one. But we can put out both, we can put out one based on what the committee decides.
well, number one, you answered my question, the boots, because I thought it's important that we get some indication.
It's definitely 100% in the brochure, and it'll be listed online as well. When anybody registers for it online and they fill that out, they will see that indicated there as well for 2023.
Yeah, the only question is the one-sided one going to be readable for people who need reading glasses? Or?
As a glasses wearer myself, yes, they should be able to read them. I can't guarantee for different prescriptions.
Okay. Okay, so we locked and loaded in the first half of the year. I just want to review the second half of the year, make sure we're all on the same page for the hikes. So July, we talked about Lucian Moran Park, and listed as that is very hilly, which it is very hilly. For August, Ellison Park starting up on Penfield Road and coming down I can't remember the name of that park, or the trail that comes down from Penfield Road.
Cubs, is it the Cubs Den Trail?
Honey Creek?
No,
No, there is no name for it
okay.
that I know of. That used to be my
Yeah,
car.
there is, but I can't remember what it is. But starting up at Penfield Road, coming down. The September hike, typically do we have Penfield history at Channing Philbrook. This past year, we went toward Panorama, so I'm assuming maybe this year we'd go the opposite direction, go upstream or up Honey Creek. October, Abraham Lincoln Park. I know, Carol, you're looking forward to that one. November, Gosnell Big Woods in Webster, so our sort of out-of-town hike for the year, and then back December, Sherwood. So everybody in agreement that that's what we should stick with?
Yeah, there are discrepancies between what Bob just said, what's on this and what's
Yep.
on this.
So
this
the
is
one
the
that's
plan.
on there, the older one, the original, no, the newer one and that one, they only had it through the brochure that they were going off. They didn't go off what the
Okay.
Trails Committee had sent. It was mostly just for a look for that one.
Okay. So any objections to confirming those for the year? Just a quick comment, though, because it reminded me of the Penfield history one. Peggy and I had the opportunity to go to the tour of the Oakwood Cemetery, and it occurred to me that there's probably opportunities in the future to consider, sort of mini hikes. Certainly it's not a long hike like the rest of our hikes, but it's an interesting place, and the women that led the hike seemed very interested in doing something like that and co-sponsoring something like that in the future with us. So something to consider for maybe sometime next year.
I think that's a great idea, yeah.
Eagle Scout projects, updates. Tim, Andrew?
So we actually just met with a Girl Scout Gold project. The girl's name was Skylar today. She's interested in doing an update on wildlife and plant life information in all of our parks and trails kiosks. So it really goes hand in hand with what the Trails Committee has talked about at many meetings this year about updating all of our kiosk information. We've started to update the kiosks with the general parks and properties rules, putting the updated trail maps out in each of the kiosks that we have that have been redone by many other scouts this year. So with Skylar looking to do this project, this was the first meeting that we had with her. But she seems very interested, looking to do this probably in 2023. So she's going to work with Tim, possibly our animal control supervisor, and work together to get that information in, if not all the kiosks, the majority of them around town. And then just as an update on the rest of them, so far in 2022, even though the one I just mentioned is probably going to be in 2023, we've had 10 different Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts reach out to us this year, which Tim can maybe speak a little bit more. That's a record number, I think, for a long time.
Yeah, usually it's just onesie, twosie, but it's been word of mouth that we're probably easier to work with than others. It's not easy projects, worthwhile projects for updating the kiosks, and it's worthy of a scout project. So we've been having scouts coming in floods, which is a positive thing.
Yep. So we've had, out of the projects this year, we have 4 new kiosks built. Some were brand new, some were removing the old one and putting a brand new one in. Currently ones that we're waiting on, we've got a disc golf display kiosk at Shadow Pines that should go in, whether it be this fall or next year. We've got a potential orienteering course at Shadow Pines property, the wildlife and plant life information I just mentioned, and then Tim and I have a meeting tomorrow with 2 scouts to talk about their project coming up. So a lot of good projects out there, really exciting stuff. We're just glad that so many scouts come out and try to give back to the town of Penfield.
Yep, we're making good headway on our kiosk replacement project. So.
Okay.
If there are any other scouts out there, you can reach out to the rec department and our parks department, and Tim and I will contact you back and have those initial meetings. So excited for the future of all that stuff.
Thanks. Immediate trail needs. If any of you have been out on any of the trails and seen anything, concerns, issues that need to be brought up?
We still got it on our list to work on Channing Philbrook Park, the one you mentioned to me before, down by the creek there. I know you mentioned that like 2 months ago. We're still trying to wrap up some other summer projects, so once we get freed up with all our snow stuff, we will be hitting the trails pretty hard. And
I did mention to Tim before the meeting that Peggy and I were out at Veterans Memorial Park in the area, the wooded area, and saw a couple issues to be dealt with, so Tim said he would look into those when he had time.
So you mentioned linear Channing Philbrook Park and maybe going left. So then you encounter all those bridges and walkways, right? Is there a long-term thought, or what's?
I know the bridges, we've talked about them, just the monetary cost to fix them is...
No doubt substantial.
It is very substantial.
Right.
Yes. So it has been talked about. It's on people's radar. I don't know if it's on the back burner, front burner, but it has been talked about.
Okay. In terms of maybe getting estimates or plans, ideas even for how to address those?
Yeah, there have been just very few conversations on starting to maybe look for bidders and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Are there some smaller ones that could be Eagle projects?
Those ones right there, since they're on the side of the bank, I'd imagine the one conversation we had would be there are 3 or 4 separate bridges. It would be replacing all those with one continuous one. So it would be a big project. Yeah.
That would be a great way to do it.
Yes. Yes.
Especially
Ideally.
if Liz got hurt on one.
Yeah, I do worry for the town a little bit, the shape that those and starting to approach a liability issue. But that's something to consider, because those are getting pretty nasty.
That section, though, is really bad as far as soil slumping coming down the hill. And it moves the bridges and destroys them. I don't know, having one continuous one, if one section gets it, it might take them all out.
Correct.
That's what you
That'd be
pay
some-
architects for, right?
Yeah, that's like
It's
the,
tough with that soil
No
coming
doubt,
down.
no doubt. So, but that's where you would get different input, right? And then weigh the options. I mean, if it's going to be that costly, it might be good to get some idea of how costly, right?
Yes.
So we can start to plan for it.
yep.
Clearly not getting into the town's budget for next year, right? Since that's being finalized tonight, I believe.
Correct.
Any other trail needs people have seen? In terms of old business, the trailhead kiosk display information. Don, a while ago, before you were a member of the Trails Committee, you came in and talked to us about some ideas. I have to admit, I haven't actually gone back and looked to see the stuff that you presented. I don't know if you want to remind us a little bit.
I mean, at that point, I didn't realize that they had these Eagle projects and new kiosks coming, right? So that's good, and there's still trailheads that could use new ones, and so that's what's ongoing. And so then the follow-on would be what information makes sense and is legitimate to post on those. And so I'm not sure if there are any, I'm not sure how we even decide at this point. Is that,
So yeah, right now, like Andy mentioned before, when we met with Skylar, the scout earlier, one of her, what we presented to her was to do like the wildlife and plant aspect of it. I know Andy's been working on the actual trail map, so that would take up, a fourth of it. Trail rules and would take up another fourth of these kiosks. So there's obviously more room for more information if we come up with it.
Well, I guess a question, I'd like to be able to put like up the week before each hike saying, guided hike Sherwood Field. I'm willing to go put the signs up, but are those locked?
So that's what we've been addressing with the new kiosks, that the older ones, we couldn't do that. You'd have to drill out the fiberglass, and it'd be a pain to kind of go and do so. And all the newer kiosks, we've asked that the scouts put in a movable display case. So I think right now in 3 out of the 4 new ones, we have information already in there because it was so easy to access. The older ones were kind of, instead of going in and putting up the park rules, putting up a trail map, we're trying to get everything together so we only have to do it once to put all that stuff up. And I'm hoping at some point, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, Tim and I will set up a date to at least get trail maps out there, general park rules, and kind of clean up the rest.
But given that, probably just better off just taking signs out and just tape them to the front?
Yeah, for the, for right now.
For temporary.
Yeah, and then as we move forward to get more of the kiosks up to par where we can unlock them, we'll go from there.
Put them inside a plastic sleeve to protect them a little bit from the rain.
Yeah, and I actually, I have Don's email that he originally sent, so Don, I swear I read your email quite often. It's one of my unread ones that I've had for a while, but I do go back to it every once in a while to get ideas of what information to put up there. One of the things that Don did send over was a couple different examples from, I believe, Webster, with how they display some of their stuff for their Friends of Webster Trails, and some of their brochures, which were kind of like one of those display cases, wooden, outside of the trail kiosk. So that's an option. Tim and I have talked about maybe having a scout project or a parks project to put in one of those this fall or winter.
And is there rules that we should remind anybody listening on putting things up on those kiosks?
Yeah, I definitely think the biggest rule is just contact the Recreation or Parks Department, and we can put those up. Definitely, there's things from time to time that people put up that we have to go and remove because it's not appropriate, or that it's not kind of approved by the town. So
Yeah.
definitely have it pass through.
Yep, it should be approved by the town if they are going to put something up on the kiosk, for sure.
Okay. Hey, the idea of, next on the agenda was the 4 Mile Creek celebration, but I personally have lost track of where that is. The family that donated the land?
Yeah, that was held on to for a while by the committee and Nels to try and move it forward. I haven't heard much, obviously with everything with Nels and the committee with COVID. We haven't really pushed for anything like that. I will say that Tim and I, when we had a scout build a footbridge over at 4 Mile Creek, we kind of walked it just to see the state of it, get some ideas. There is probably a needed footbridge that I think we want to have that done before we unveil it, because the trail kind of stops at one point where you can't cross over the creek. So I think kind of moving forward, that was going to be our, once that Eagle Scout project or Parks project happens, then, okay, this might be a little bit better to open up and have some sort of a ceremony. I don't know how soon that's going to be.
And if I remember correctly, with the ceremony end of things, I believe back when Tony LaFountain was still supervisor, that they reached out, didn't hear anything back from the family that donated it. So it was going to be one of those, once the projects are done, we'll just do like a guided hike there or something, and maybe a little history and a grand opening per se, but.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the last time I think we spoke about it,
Yep.
which would have been like spring, summertime.
Yep.
Actually, looping back to a little bit on upcoming hikes, because it actually leads to, the next meeting is scheduled for December 7th. I am unavailable due to a work commitment. So my personal vote would be that we do not have a meeting, but if, in order to say that, well, unless someone else wants to lead it, but if not, we got to need to make sure we're prepared for the next couple hikes after that. So in terms of the December hike, which is at Thousand Acre Swamp,
I can do that.
Don Hoyler nicely just raised his hand. Appreciate that. January, the hike at Ellison Park up to the
Fort Schuyler.
Fort Schuyler. How do we reserve that?
I did it.
Did you? Okay.
I can do it again.
If you could, that would
Sure.
be greatly appreciated. And then that's an example, though. We need someone to lead the hike, but we also need someone to be up at the
The
Fort
floor.
Schuyler
Right.
to warm it up. So I don't know if that's something, Denny, you could help with.
Hot chocolate in the house.
Right, and serve hot chocolate, and so, Denny, if you could, definitely, if you could reserve it. And
Oh, yeah.
If you think you're available to do the fire, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll figure out how to staff it. But I would-
I think I may be available to help as well for that
Yeah.
one.
Maybe we have snow then.
last year, we had people in snowshoes and skis, and also some people walking, so it was it worked out great.
What was the date of that again, please?
It's the 14th.
January 14th.
Thank you.
Sorry to go back on the agenda. The trails easement updates, I haven't heard anything from Ed, have you?
He did not report anything when he called today, so.
Okay, I'll try to touch base with him. Okay, Andrew, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board?
Yep. So I wanted to announce to the committee that the town is planning to bring back the Penfield Parks and Recreation Advisory Board for 2023. We plan to, in the next upcoming weeks, put out information to the public. If anybody is interested in becoming a part of that board, they would be able to apply for that. We're hoping to start in early 2023, whether it be January and February, based on how many applicants we get and people that are interested. And therefore, for the Trails Committee, the thought would be, in some of our meetings for the Trails Committee, you know, it's nice to be able to focus on trails, do guided hikes, and all that we do here. But we've seen kind of a little bit more outcry from the public with questions that maybe come into the Parks and Rec departments, but also coming to the Trails Committee that are a little bit more broad when it comes to Parks and Recreation and might not be applicable directly to a Trails Advisory Committee. So we are hoping to continue to have the Penfield Trails Committee. It would be a subcommittee of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. With that happening, most likely the Penfield Parks and Recreation Advisory Board would have the meetings during this time. And because the Trails Committee would be a subcommittee, most likely it would be able to go back to its original format of meetings, having it be at the community center. I still have to look in to see if that continues to need to be televised. I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's at least the thought moving forward, to have Penfield Parks and Rec Advisory Board kind of handle more of those broad parks and recreation things that come in, and then the Trails Committee would be a subcommittee off that. So I just wanted to make that announcement to the Trails Committee. It may not affect anything on this Trails Committee. Obviously, it's still going to happen moving forward, but it just might change kind of where the meetings are and how those are handled in 2023.
Yeah, for those of you who were not involved in the past, these were never televised until COVID. They were always just done in a conference room at the community center.
Yep. So yeah, I will get more information in the upcoming weeks, share that with the committee moving forward, and more information will go out to the public regarding the Parks and Rec Advisory Board.
Any other topics for the committee?
No.
So we will cancel the December meeting. Right now, we'll tentatively assume we're going to have a meeting someplace to be determined in early January.
Yep.
Date and time to be determined.
Yep, I think as that moves forward, we'll see what the logistics are, if they need to be televised or not as a subcommittee, and see what kind of works with the group at that point, to see if a day wants to be changed or a time, and we can see what's available at the rec center if it needs to be that, or if they continue to need to be here.
Okay. Any objections to adjourning? So be it. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.